Wondering what's next in your business or personal life? Welcome to Success to Significance, Life After Breaking Through Glass Ceilings, a podcast dedicated to helping you with all of life's challenges, discoveries, and opportunities. Whether you're seeking a new career, retirement, or simply wanting to make an impact in your community or the world. Join Jen du Plessis and her guests as they explore how to start, what to do when you're in the thick of a change or growth, and how to leave a mark in this world after breaking through your next achievement. You are moments away from the aha you've been seeking.
Welcome to this episode of Success to Significance, Life After Breaking Through Glass Ceilings. I'm your host, Jen du Plessis. I have a really fun guest with us today, Goose McGrath. We're going to talk about Glenn here in a minute, but Goose, welcome to the show. We are so excited to have you here today.
Jen, it's an absolute pleasure. I've got to say, I mean, we've been lucky enough to have had a conversation on my podcast as well. And it's been a real joy getting to know you, even just over these past few weeks of interactions. And I just want to say thanks for having me on your show and for giving me an opportunity to share my story and to help other people that are in your world. So thanks.
Yeah, of course. Yeah. And we finally realized that we needed to start recording because we were just chatting so much in the green room about everything and anything. So now listen, if you're listening, great, fantastic. If you're watching, the reason I have a little tiara on my head is today is my birthday while we're recording.
And happy birthday again.
Thank you. And, I'm just celebrating it. That's what we should do. Celebrate it, celebrate.
We should celebrate every day.
Absolutely. So I want to kind of dive into this. So first of all, let's make sure everybody understands. So you are in Australia, which I absolutely love, Australia. And you are a real estate agent.
Correct.
That's what's interesting. And very unique though. Go ahead. No, I was going to say it's a very unique way.
Totally. It's a little different here. So it's quite interesting because real estate investing, you would think that it's all the same, right? You're just buying houses, selling houses, and all that kind of stuff. Now, in essence, the Australian market is fundamentally the same as the US. However, structurally and culturally, it's just slightly different. So what I do here in Australia is I'm a buyer's agent. Now, in the US, a realtor or a real estate agent, we can interchange those two terms because I'm technically just a licensed real estate agent. Yeah. Now, a realtor could represent either or both sides of the transaction. Correct?
Yep.
Now, in Australia, that's not the done thing. So the done thing is that there are selling agents and they only sell properties, and then there are buying agents. However, here's the thing, buying agents are quite new, and there are roughly 75,000 selling agents and roughly 1,200 buying agents. So it's kind of like an untapped market. So we're kind of in this position where, we don't do any selling of properties. We never sell any properties. We don't do any of that kind of stuff. We only meet with buyers and help them to find properties. But more specifically than that, we only help investors. We don't help homeowners. And even more specifically than that, we've actually got a methodology that we call the Holy Trinity, which centers around cash flow positive properties in high growth areas with value add potential. Now, because the market is slightly different in Australia to the US, like the US, it's fairly common to get quite high cash flow and quite high yields in properties. It's less common in Australia because we have much more of a growth market. So finding that unique combination is kind of, that's where
the diamond in the rough. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah. And I think it's really interesting, and I think what ends up happening here is that realtors, fall into those categories. They come in and they say, I'm doing all things real estate. And then they start saying, but I kind of like working with buyers, or I kind of like working with sellers, and they sort of fall into it, but it's not mutually exclusive like it is there.
Yeah.
So that's interesting. Totally. So what made that start happening? I mean, if there's only 1,200, is that something new? Is that something that, all of a sudden everyone said, well, now there needs to be representation on the other side? Or was it just that the selling agents had all of the representation?
Well, I don't know who the first buyer's agent in Australia was, but I think I actually read a story about him the other day, and he started around about 50 years ago, right?
Okay.
So it's not brand new, right? It's not like in the last 12 months it suddenly become a thing.
Yeah.
But it was a fractional minority, and the place where it sat within the ecosystem was typically for wealthy homeowners who wanted to take the hassle out of finding the right home in the area. So they would look for a local area expert who would be able to help them to find. So it saves them going to open homes and all of that kind of stuff. Now there's been an inflection point, and that's the really interesting thing. So it's been sort of there. It's been a thing that's been happening. There are some buyers agencies that are, probably 10, 20 years old, I think. But there was a distinct inflection point. So one of my mentors actually went to the US and kind of realized that there was the whole buying representation side, which isn't a done thing. So in Australia, literally 99% of people who buy a property just go to a selling agent and say, hey, can you give me the best property? And they're just going to get sold to, right? It's quite interesting. Anyway, so my mentor came back and said, you know what, I think there's actually a place in the market here for this. And there was already some people doing it, but he he built the biggest buying agency in the country at the time. Now he trains buyers agents, and so there's a few more in the market now.
Yeah, that's cool.
Yeah, so it's quite it is quite a cool thing.
So why did you go into the investor space? What was the impetus for that?
Yeah, it's a great question. The whole reason I'm not actually my background is not real estate at all. So
we're going to learn about, I know, here in a moment. Yeah.
Well, totally. I think we can probably start there now, because the whole reason that I am here kind of stems back to, where it all kind of started. So, to a little bit of context. So I'm a high school dropout. I left school when I was 17, not because I was, no good. I was great at school. But the problem was I was already running my own businesses and stuff like that, and I didn't have time for it. So I said to my parents, I said, look, I think I know what I want to do, and it doesn't constitute me finishing, my exams.
Sitting in a classroom. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So I left school early and I started organizing music festivals. That was my passion. To get back to that, actually, I was going to be a soccer player originally, but then I shattered my spine in a motorbike accident and couldn't play football anymore. So anyway, moved into the music sector, started doing that because that was my passion, and really kind of got into that in a big way and started making a lot of headway in that whole kind of scene. And for roughly 15 years, I organized music and arts festivals all over the world. So I've done stuff in the States like Burning Man, organized things, worked on things like the Olympics in London, organized events for like 1 million people for the Malaysian government, all kinds of different stuff, all the way down to like really niche and weird, random tiny little parties out in the middle of the desert in other places of the world and stuff as well. So, that whole journey was amazing. We had companies in 3 continents. At times we were employing, up to a couple of hundred people, on a contract basis for an event and stuff like that. So it was a pretty going concern. The kind of downside though, it was really fun at the start, the whole kind of like travel the world, organize parties in your 20s.
Living the life, living the dream, right?
Yeah. Exactly. So as you can imagine, it was a pretty wild decade or so, which was great and fun. However, I sort of, I went through the whole kind of, got married. That didn't work. It was like my life was in chaos and I didn't realize it. And at the end of the day, I got to about 30 years old and realized that I was a drug addict and an alcoholic, and I was basically broke. My businesses were failing. I had nowhere to live. I was living on my office floor. Like it was pretty grim. Like I'd pretty much hit the bottom. Like I had nowhere to go, no money, and I was a drug and alcohol addict. So things weren't great.
Were you with your family? Did you have your family around that they were supporting you or trying to support you or trying to get you to realize or?
I was pretty disconnected by choice. And I was quite high functioning. So I don't think a lot of people realized how big of a problem it was. Yeah. I was very high functioning. Like I was organizing very large scale events and managing large teams. And on the outside, a lot of people thought, oh my God, this guy's crushing it. He's doing all this cool stuff and what a great life and everything like that. But no one could really see behind the scenes about what was going on. So, I guess that was a pretty big turning point in my life. And it was around about that. It was around about that point in time that I met my now partner, Gabby, who kind of stumbled into my life. And I was like, was kind of shaken awake, like a bit of a jolt. And somehow she managed to see through the mess that I was at that point in time, and believe in me. And we started our relationship together. And I started going, okay, actually, if I want to maintain this relationship, if I want to keep this woman, which I do, and I did, and I do, I had to basically sort myself out. And now that doesn't, I'd love to say that it was like a switch. Like I went, oh my God, I've fallen in love and now I'm just sober.
Perfect.
Yeah. That's not true. And it didn't happen. And obviously it takes a couple of years, of really trying to turn your life around. One of those big turning points though was, as a young couple, I was working 100-hour weeks in my business, right? So that was part of the reason I'd started drinking and taking drugs and stuff, was because I was just trying to numb out the constant
tire,
noise,
the pace, everything. Yeah.
Yeah, totally. And it becomes a vicious cycle and everything like that. So, working 100-hour weeks, burnt out, no money, like business wasn't going great, all that kind of stuff. Gabby and I were like, okay, cool. Let's try and make a better life for ourselves. And we thought, like most young people, we thought, great, let's go and buy some real estate, because at that point in time, we thought that there's a common phrase in Australia that property doubles every 7 to 10 years. Property doubles in value every 7 to 10 years.
Okay, kind of like the rule of 72.
Yeah, exactly. Right. The problem is it's A, not true, and B, it's not true. So, but I remember having a conversation with my business partner at the time. That was like, we literally looking at each other going, okay, so property doubles every 7 years. Yeah. And we're like, yeah. I think so. So it doesn't matter what you buy, right? No. I think you just buy property, any property. It just goes up.
That's what I was going to ask you, is what's the first property? Here we go.
Yeah, totally. And we were like, yeah, okay, I think that's how it works. So we were like, great, armed with that pearl of wisdom that it doesn't matter what you buy, just buy something and it'll double every 7 years. We thought, great, this is our pathway to living a better life, working less, making more, having more freedom. Because you hear all these stories about people building wealth in real estate, and ultimately, that's all anyone ever really wants is more time, more freedom, more money, so they can live a life of passion, right?
Yeah.
So, armed with that amount of knowledge, Gabby and I went, okay, well, let's go buy something. So we didn't have a lot of money at the time, so we borrowed money off our families and stuff. Like, right, okay, we're doing this. And then we went and bought an off-the-plan apartment right before a market downturn, and like all of these kind of stuff.
Right. And now, was that an owner occupied? Did you buy a house for investment, or did you buy it for yourselves?
Well, here's the thing. We told ourselves that we were making an astute financial decision, but it was an emotional decision, because it was like, oh my God, it's not even built yet. That property still has not even completed. And that was years ago. So, but it's like nice swimming pools and business centers, and it's like all the trimmings. It's like luxury apartment overlooking the park. And we're like, oh yeah, this is a great financial decision. Good. Wrong. So the long and the short of it is, we bought the wrong property in the wrong place at the wrong time.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And it was quite funny, because when we were signing the contract, the day that we were signing the contract, we had booked to go to a property education seminar. And
decided
so we were like,
you didn't need to because you bought a house.
No. We were interested, right? Because we started getting the bug. We were like, property.
Okay, gotcha. Cool. Yeah.
So he's trying to talk to us like, hey, yeah, sign here. We're like, dude, hurry up. We've got to get to this. We've got to get to this education. So yeah, sign. Enough of the chit chat. Come on, let's go. So we're just scribbling, signing the contract, jumped in the car, raced across the city to get to the other side of town to go to this property education seminar. And of course, it's one of those ones that it's like, selling you into a course and whatever. But nonetheless, it was the first kind of one that we'd ever been to. And we went in there and we sat down, and then they started talking about things like positive cash flow and how to find areas of growth. And we were like, ooh.
Do we have positive cash flow? Is that what?
I think we might have made a little mistake here. But that was great, because it was a turning point. It was a turning point for us. Now, bearing in mind, still working in events, still, trying to navigate getting sober, doing all that kind of stuff. Like, it's all part of that journey. But that was an inflection point for our life, where we went, hang on a second, I think we've made a mistake here, but I'm pretty sure we should be able to actually work out how to get ourselves to where we want to go. And that started a big journey for us, where we, invest a lot of money in courses and whatever, and good ones and bad ones and all of that kind of stuff. And
Oh,
started
yeah,
to,
they're all up
yeah,
there. Yeah.
yeah. And you distill down the best bits and chuck out the worst bits and all of that kind of stuff. And that was all good. And that over the course of a year, we built up a wealth of knowledge and skills and tools and resources and ideas and built our own processes and all of that kind of stuff, really just for us, because we were just trying to work out, hey, how can we have more time, more freedom, more money?
More money, right? Yeah.
Exactly. And so, that's where we distilled down our core principles that we now call the Holy Trinity and all of this kind of stuff. But it was sort of through that process that we realized, hang on a second, there's probably like heaps of other people that are just like us who would probably go out and make a mistake. And what if we could just help some of them? What if we could just help a few? And so that's kind of how it started. And now, and so from there, after a few months, I decided, you know what, I've got more passion for real estate than I do for events now, because that was kind of like I'd done that for about 15 years. And so we decided that we'd get stuck into it and start helping people to buy the right investment properties. Now, kind of what we specialize in is helping business owners and entrepreneurs, which is something that's really close to my heart, because as someone who started their own business, worked for 15 years and ended up with nothing. And when I look at people like my brother, and I see so many other business, my brother's a farmer, he's working really, really hard, but everything's in his business. And I see so many business owners that get so caught up in their business that they forget to build wealth outside of business, and they get stuck on a hamster wheel.
Yeah.
And so that's kind of what I'm passionate about today.
Yeah. Yeah. And, we talked about that on my podcast as well. I mean, on your, when I was your guest on your podcast, your podcast as well, that we both have that same passion, for helping people realize, to build themselves first. And that, and we talked about this is like, put your mask on first and then help others before you, are out there helping others, because it's, it's not sustainable. And you proved it. I mean, that's the glass ceilings that you had been, jumping through and crashing through, and really sometimes going the other way through those, what becomes when you break through a glass ceiling, it becomes your floor. But sometimes you had some floors you had to go down and rebuild up through some other ceilings.
Totally. Unless you've got a solid footing, when you break through those ceilings, you fall back straight through.
You go right back through. Yeah. With no safety net.
Exactly.
No safety net, because you think you've arrived, right? You're going, oh, I've arrived. Now I'm at the next level. So I'm good. But man, it can just take you all the way down.
Totally. In my mid to late 20s, getting flown around the world and consulting to governments, and I was like, I'm the king. What's going on here? And then fast forward a couple of years, and I'm broke and living on my office floor.
On your floor. Yeah. Okay. So you bought your first, your first house, right? You bought this first house, and it still hasn't been built, which I think is funny. Was it a condo, right? Is that what it was? Condo?
Well, an apartment.
An apartment, part of an apartment building. Yeah. So
yeah.
So what gave you, I mean, yes, it gave you the you said, okay, I have the, I have the passion now for it, or the, whatever it is, the button, the fire in your belly for it. And you said, we'll just try it again. We're going to try it again. We're going to do it right the next time we're going to do it. But what gave you that ability to do that? Because most people, we owe mom and dad. They gave us some money. They helped us out. We look like a fool. We look this, because I think this is something that transcends in everything we do, not just buying real estate. It's also in business. And for the people that are our listeners, who are thinking about transitioning and going from being successful in one space and maybe making an impact, showing other people how to do this so they don't have that same thing. What gives you the gumption to be able to, I can't think of the word I want to use, but what gives you that, that drive to want to do that, even if you failed?
Yeah, that is a great question. And I'd love to say something like impact and all of that kind of stuff.
And all these beautiful things. Yeah.
Yeah. Which is true. Like that is what motivates me the most now.
Right.
However, if you kind of take it back to then, it's like, why didn't we just go, oh, all right, well, that was a mistake, and I guess we'll just never do this. And
yeah.
To be honest, for me, I think I was at a point, I was another turning point where I looked backwards and I said, okay, that's what my life has been like. And I looked forward and I said, well, what do I want my life to be like?
Yeah.
And it was at that point where I went, okay, well, if I keep doing what I've always done, I'm going to get what I've always had.
Yep.
Right. And so
Yep.
I have to do something different, and I have to be prepared to fail. And I believe that, you know what, everyone says, fail fast, fail forward, fail, do as much failing as you can because you learn.
Right.
I mean, it'd be a hell of a lot nicer if you just didn't fail, I think. Like, it'd be really great.
Wouldn't that be? Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, like, cool, you get to learn the lessons, but I mean, I'd much rather short circuit it and not have to fail. That being said, I think that when you've experienced getting close to the edge, in terms of when you've hit rock bottom, then you kind of know where that is, and you have a benchmark. You're like, okay, cool. Now I understand what's down there,
and I don't want it again.
And I don't want that again.
Yeah.
If you've just constantly lived on the median line, you would probably have less motivation, I would suggest, because you'd be like, well, I don't know, like what is worse than this? I'm not really sure, because everything's kind of been about the same the whole time. But if you've gone all the way down, I like to think that life is a little bit more like everything's frequency and motion.
Yeah.
And frequency waves go up and down and up and down. They oscillate, and you tend to find this continuing pattern throughout all things in life: metaphysical, physical. Like if you think about the way atoms work, sound, emotions, everything happens in a frequency and a flow. And so the depth of one line of the frequency, the depth that it goes down, is typically the polarization of how far you can go up as well. And I tend to think that those kind of things find balance. So for me, I was like, okay, well, I know that I want better and more, and what do I want? And it was a really big question about looking, and me and Gabby sitting down and going, okay, well, what do we want? What do we want out of life? Because we didn't start our buyer's agency saying, all right, we're gonna be like, we're going to turn into real estate agents, and we're going to buy shiny suits, and we're going to go and get nice cars, and we're going to do all of that kind of stuff.
Take pictures of ourselves and never change them for years.
Yeah, totally. We said to each other, all right, okay, I think we've actually done something here where we can help other people. So what do we want out of life? Well, if we can design a business that would allow us, this was the benchmark of how we wanted to design the business, that would allow us to operate from a beach in Bali. Now, not saying that that's the goal. We don't actually want to move to Bali, but we said, okay, well, what would that need to look like? And how would that need to be if we could do everything that we wanted to do, help other people, help other people to build wealth for ourselves, but also have the ability to live a life of passion for ourselves and to help other people to do the exact same thing. What would that need to look like? And then that's kind of served as our guide for everything over the last few years.
Yeah. Yeah. So now I know that, so you, I can't even remember. Do you even have a course or anything? I don't think you do. I think you just sell real estate to investors. Well,
no, we don't sell. I'm going to reframe this for you, because it's really interesting, because a lot of people, they're like, oh, real estate guy, you got a course or something, or what's that? No,
yeah,
we don't.
You sell real estate. Well, and this was leading up to the question about, your book, Limitless, the Renegade's Guide to Building Wealth, and how that is different from, so if I were living in Australia and I said I wanted to be an investor, I wanted to have wealth, you don't have a course, but I would come to you and say, help me find a house, right? Help me find a house.
Kind of.
Why is it a renegade though? Why? Well, fix me on that, help me out on that, and then ask me, and then tell us, why is it a renegade? Why is it so different from what everybody else is doing? Yeah,
totally. So that's a really great question. So first and foremost, I'll go back to the start of that. So yeah, we don't have a course. We don't sell property or anything like that. What we do is more like a professional services company. So people will come to us, and we don't act like a shopping service either. It's not like, hey, go buy me a house. It's more typically like, hey, this is where I am. This is where I want to be. How do I get, I'm interested in using real estate as that vehicle, but what does that need to look like, and how do we do that? Okay. So that's kind of where we fit in. So it's a bit of strategy, advisory, all of that kind of stuff, all rolled into one. And then we partner with our clients to get them to the destination. So it's not like, hey, here's a house, let us know when you want the next one. It's more like, okay, well, we're probably going to need to get 6. They're going to need to have these characteristics. We'll need to do it in this timeline. We'll work with your finance team and whatever and get you to where you want to go. So it's a little bit of a different structure,
Cool.
which is different.
Yeah. So it's almost like a fiduciary for real estate rather than a fiduciary for brokerage,
Yeah, exactly. And so and that's actually different to how other buyers agents work as well. Most other buyers agents it's a bit more like, hey, go buy me a house, right?
Yeah, let's get in the car together, Dan and I.
Yeah, totally. We typically, we don't do any of that kind of stuff. We don't operate like that. And it's really interesting that you said a fiduciary, because that's the way that we kind of see our role. So
yeah,
exactly. So there's that. Now the book in and of itself, the Renegades part is, let me just try and unpack that a little bit. There's a few reasons that we use that specific word. So partly because in the real estate industry in Australia, possibly, I would say more than the US, it's pretty stuffy, right? It's a pretty stuffy industry where people typically tend not to want to step outside the status quo and
walk the line. Everybody does the same thing.
Yeah. You can read, it's a very, bland industry, I would say, broadly speaking. And so in the book, I talk about some pretty big stuff. I talk about drug addiction. I talk about a lot of personal development stuff. So it's really digging deep into, rather than like, hey, this is how you go and buy real estate. It's more like, this is actually how you can transform your life and have a better life. And actually, maybe the goal isn't to buy as many properties as you can. Maybe it's to buy as many properties as you need. And it sort of ticks into that kind of stuff. Now, the big piece that we challenge the rest of the real estate industry in Australia is this idea that you can get all 3 factors of the Holy Trinity. So the common belief in Australia, even by senior experienced real estate investing professionals, is that you can either get strong capital growth or you can get positive cash flow, and you can't get the two together.
Yeah. And actually, we hear that too. We hear that here too, where if you get both, awesome. But generally, you're not going to get both. So pick one.
Yeah, exactly. So if we wind it back a little bit to just after when we realized that we'd kind of made a mistake on that first property ourselves, we sat down and said, okay, well, what would the perfect property look like? What would it look like? It would, not physically, but like, what characteristics would it have? It'd be like, well, we get good capital growth, and it'd be positive cash flow. So it'd actually help us to replace our income and pay down its own debt and do all of that good stuff that actually having cash flow does. And also because it had just been a market downturn there as well, which is why the property is actually now worth less than anyway. So we said, we'd need to have some way to control the outcome. So we'd need to be able to add value to it in some way down the line, not straight away, so that if market conditions changed, if the government changed, policies changed or whatever, or if there was a natural disaster or, a pandemic, that we would still be able to control that outcome.
Yeah.
Now, so first and foremost, people don't think you can get cash flow and growth together, let alone when you throw in a third characteristic that you need to be able to add value to it and manufacture more cash flow and equity. Now, that obviously seemed like a bit of an impossible task, which is why it took us so long to work out how can we find these kind of properties? Because if you know that you can find those kind of properties, why would you settle for anything less? That's the big question,
right. That's part of it. Yeah.
And so the book is really about firstly challenging people to think about where they are, who they are, where they're going, and why, and then challenging the notions that have been, killing sacred cows, basically, that have been telling people that the only way to build wealth is to have negatively geared properties. Do you know what negative gearing is?
No, actually, I've never heard of that one.
Okay, so negative gearing. So the common belief in Australia is that if you're going to invest in property, it must be negatively geared, which means it produces less income than it uses, and that it's a tax minimization strategy. So if you think about like that from a business perspective, if you had a business that loses money, you would get tax breaks, right?
Gotcha. Okay, yep, I follow it.
Yeah. So the idea is that first it challenges people to challenge themselves, and then challenges the way that they think about real estate and what can be achieved, and then shows them how to do it. And so it's really, if you're prepared to walk that path and first look at yourself and your why, and then be prepared to challenge the status quo, you can actually unlock, a much better way to. Yeah, the reason it's called limitless is if you get the metrics correct. if you get it like all dialed in correctly, if you get the right amount of cash flow, the right amount of growth, the right value adds, and all of that kind of stuff together, you can systematically build as big a property portfolio as you want, which in a country where 74% of property investors never get past property number one and 92% never get past property number two, there's a big issue, because most people want to invest in real estate because they want to, have better retirement, do all that kind of stuff, more time, more freedom, more money. And they get stuck at number one or number two. Most get stuck at number one because they buy negatively geared properties, or they buy the wrong property, wrong place, wrong time. Whereas what we can show people is, well, this is how you can buy, 10 in 5 years if you wanted to get aggressive about it. And so it really changes the game in terms of how people can think
and
about
I mean,
their own wealth creation.
it's just a mind shift. I mean, it really is a mindset shift, in how you're looking at how property can grow for you. Because, and I do think, I mean, even here in the United States, I think one of the reasons, and gosh, it's really funny because I've asked real estate agents when I've trained them in the past, how many of you own your own home, and some hands go up. Right. And then how many of you own investment properties, and not as many hands. And this is your product.
Yeah.
This is the product that you're, pitching out there and saying that is grandiose and great, but yet you're not the one who's using the product. And it's kind of like a dentist saying, well, you should brush your teeth every day, but check mine out. I haven't, it doesn't make any sense. And so have you become a disruptor in your world, doing what you're doing? Or is it more that it's like an aha moment? It's like, whoa, that's something really cool. That's impactful.
Yeah, it's definitely, there's definitely mixed responses, I would say. So because for a lot of, I would say, the old guard in real estate here, when you've got a big message and a big idea, and all of a sudden you realize you can actually help people and change stuff, you want to shout it from the rooftops.
Absolutely. And so they're like, whoa, whoa, whoa.
Yeah, there's a lot of whoa, whoa, whoa. I would say that we're an atypical model in the real estate industry in how we approach life and business and how we show up in the world. And that has definitely rubbed some people the wrong way. I would say that because their vernacular or their messaging for the last, say, 5-10 years or whatever has been around a single silo of like, okay, you must get one of these things. And then so to say, actually, look, that's great. And you can do it like that. But, there's actually a completely different way. It's a completely different way you can do it. I'm not saying that the way that other people are doing it is wrong. It typically all works. Just depends on what you're optimizing for. Like, what is the outcome that you're optimizing for in your life, and what's the goal? And so it's definitely shaken a few branches, particularly because, by my own admission, I don't have a 50 property portfolio. I haven't been in this industry for the last, 20 years or anything like that. So a lot of people are sort of like, well, who are you and what are you doing? And, who are you to say all this kind of stuff? I mean, but to be completely honest, it's like the results themselves, I don't even need to justify it, because typically our clients are getting over a 65% return on investment in 1 year.
Wow.
Which is insane, and that's insane
whether in stocks or we have some properties that we have 34 and 43 and we think we're the cat's meow.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And that's incredible. That's incredible to get those kinds, returns. And I think one of the things that people fail to recognize is that, and again, this would hold true in entrepreneurship, not just investing in property, but we start here. And I know that you talk about it and I talk about it too, is, bridging the gap and knowing where you want to go and why you want to go and, and all of those things. But when people don't take the time to do that, there is no end. It's oblivion, right? There's just nothing there to look forward to. It's more that I have to accumulate. It's like a nut, a squirrel gathering nuts. I just need them. I don't know why I need them, but I need them because if I get enough of them, then I'm going to be okay at retirement. But rather than looking and saying, okay, winter's coming, or this is where I want to be in 5 years, 10 years. And it's opportune for today because of my birthday. And I'm going to share that in a minute, but it's looking and saying, okay, that's where I want to go by this time. And this is what I need to get there. And now it's so much easier to build that. It's so much easier to identify the need for it. Wouldn't you agree? Yeah.
I 100% agree, because I get so many people that come to me and they're like, The common phrase that people say is 10 properties in 10 years. That's what I want to do.
Because
And I'm
someone
like,
planted that seed.
yeah, it's just sort of the thing. Oh yeah, 10 in 10. Okay. I mean, that's cool. Like maybe that is good. Maybe it's great. But is it 10 $100,000 properties? Is it 10 $1 million properties? Is it, what kind of cash flow do you want out of it? What is the function? What is it actually going to do for you? Like, what is it actually going to do for you? And so I think understanding that is massive, is huge, because maybe you can actually get everything you want out of life in 5 properties, and you could do that in 4 years, or maybe it's up at the other end of the spectrum.
Yeah, maybe it's
and yeah, exactly. And for some people, it's there's that kind of like gathering the nuts thing. I think is a great analogy, because I know people that have got it's much harder in Australia to grow a big property portfolio. Like it is significantly harder to grow a multiple property portfolio. Well, I know people that have got 20, 30 properties, and that's great, but they by their own admission, they went through that whole phase of like, I just think I've just got to try and get as many as I can. Whereas, it hasn't actually necessarily served any, don't get me wrong, in 20 years, they're going to be fantastic.
Well, yeah, but not without the pain and the heartache of buying the wrong one because it doesn't have the cash flow or the appreciation.
Yeah.
And it just dormant, and it's not doing anything for a portfolio except that you don't have the cash.
Yeah, exactly. And so I think, as you said, like this applies to both property investing and business, because, you got to think with your business as well. It's like, what are you optimizing for? Because there's so many analogies between property investing and real estate, because are you just optimizing for revenue? Like, are you just trying to grow and forgetting to optimize for profit?
I need more clients. More clients. Yeah.
No, you probably just need more profit. You probably actually don't need more clients. You probably just need more profit.
Right. So maybe clients. You need the right everything. Yeah.
Yeah. You need the right clients. You need to like think about where your money's going and why. And, because you get negatively geared companies like Uber, for example, are a negatively geared company where it's all about growth, and they lose money all the time. They lose money all the time, and they just got to constantly get more investors. And that's cool if that's what you want to optimize for. But I see so many businesses and humans that just chase bigger, and they think bigger is better, where actually better is better, and it's got nothing to do with bigger.
Yeah. And this is the why is so important too, right? Because there's so many seeds that are planted by everyone about what success is. Oh, success is that you have to have 50 properties because that means you're a successful investor. But it doesn't necessarily mean that. I mean, in business, success is that you have to have 100 employees, or you have to reach 10 million in revenue a year, right? But it's everybody else's goal, everyone else's definition of what success is. And we lose our individuality, and we lose what really serves us. Like you said, going back all the way to the very beginning, when you said, what do I really want? What really fulfills me? What really makes me happy? And I think that's key. I'll tell you what, my son, I just think he went through this because he was accumulating some properties and doing very well and all that. And then just let go of some properties and said, they're just not serving me anymore. It's not fun to say that I have X amount of properties if it's not serving me anymore. Yeah. It's painful. It's, this, that, and the other. And it's funny you said that because, we had a lot of investment properties. We still do, but we've turned them over half of them are now Airbnb because they serve us better. And the balance of them, we're offering the homes to our tenants in a, subject to kind of manner where we're going to, well, it's a wrap, right? It's kind of a wrap where we're saying, look, instead of renting from us, why don't you buy from us? We'll hold a portion of the note. We'll still pay the first note, but we'll hold a portion of the second note, which is everybody does it. Not everybody, you have to know how to do it, but we'll hold the other part of the note because we got to the point where we just didn't want the phone calls.
Yeah. Okay. Got it.
Now you own it. You take care of it. Now with Airbnb, it's different because it's churning all the time. And so, you're not having a person in a property for a year and they make a mess and now you got to go clean it up. They're in it for 3 or 4 days and you get to clean it.
Yeah.
Right, or a week. So we just kind of changed our tune, just because we are at a different place in our life where we're saying, yes, we still want that cash flow, but we don't want the hassle that comes with that cash flow. Mm-hmm. And I think that that's something that, that you probably talk about with people is, how involved do you want to be in this thing, right? Are
Yeah.
you handy, or do you have resources, right? And we all learned that from the gurus, get our team built.
Yeah, exactly right. And you know what? Most people want a pretty hands-off experience. Like really, at the end of the day, most people want the lowest impact way to get a good return, and and again, more time, more freedom, more money. Like most business owners would love the ability to not have to
go in,
feel like, not have to go in, to be able to go, okay, cool, I can work by choice. Like I'm not reliant on this business to feed me anymore. And if you can kind of get these two things working in tandem, I think that's where a lot of magic happens, particularly as a business owner. Like if you can grow your business and as a good cash flow vehicle, but most businesses don't sell. Most businesses are not built to sell. So if you can then take some of that and then build an actual wealth strategy and wealth stream outside of it, you get the best of both worlds, and you can have what you want out of life so much faster and so much easier.
Yeah, I love it. Who does this for businesses? You've done it for real estate. Who does this for businesses? Are you aware of a company that does this type of thing, that says, we're going to create? I mean, I know that there are segments of the market where people will help you in getting your business to sell, and to be able to position it to sell. My son's in the midst of that right now, getting it there. But it seems like he had to get it to a certain point before anyone would even take a look. So there's a gap missing there.
It's a good question. As in, like, you're basically saying who can act like a business fiduciary and say, okay, let's look at this whole thing, and then how can we optimize this to get you to where you want? Is it to work less? Is it to get bigger? Right. And all of that kind of stuff. It's a good question. It's a good question. I mean, I know that there are some people, but they're very model specific. They're very model specific.
Yeah,
so for example,
for financial planners or something like that, where there's normal succession, right? An attorney, those types of things, but not for just the general business. So maybe that's a new business. Maybe that's a new business model, right?
We'll see.
Because, you would grow your business completely different if you knew that the end, start with the end in mind, right? If you knew the end was not just, I need to make money, I need to have this business going, and I'm hoping to meet this certain income level and all that, and I need more clients, and I need to hire people because I want the time, freedom, and money, right? Like all those things. But where is it going?
Yeah.
Where's it going? And if you had that, where's it going from the very beginning, I think a lot of the decisions that you'd be making in the front side would be different. I also think there'd be a lot more successful businesses. And I also think there would be more people getting into business because they have that certainty, of where they're going to be heading.
Yeah, totally. And I think it's really interesting because, like anyone who starts a business, I've like, right, we're going to build $100 million company. And then, you know what? I'm actually like, we're at the point now where we're like, if we just had 100 of the right clients, just 100 of the right clients, I think that would be a real sweet, possibly, right? But if we you can just optimize it in a different way. You're not going to try and, we tried to go, all right, let's try and get as many clients as we can. And then we grew very, very fast, but then we realized that's not what we wanted. And so then we said, okay, well, how do we build this for what we want? And you'll find, I think, if you really think about how does this machine work for me? How does this machine work for me? What do I want? Do I really want to, have to manage 100 people? No, probably not. If I could have a team of 6 or 10, and if I could work 20 hours a week, and if I had, there was enough stability and continuity that, I didn't have to be worried about where the next sale is coming from. And if there was enough profit that I could live the life at the standard that I want and also build personal wealth, would that be enough? And I think a lot of people don't ask themselves the question, what is enough?
Yeah.
They just think more is better.
Right. And it's different for everybody, right? Just because of lifestyle needs and what people are. But I also think it's different geographically. It is different.
Yep.
I know, for example, I'm going to bring up my son again, where I live in the richest county they call it the most wealthy county in the United States of America.
Wow.
Per capita, we make more money than anybody. That doesn't mean we have more money. That means we make more money. Our expenses are just as bad. Our homes are expensive, right? All of those things. My son moved one state away, well, 1.5, 2 states away. And, on the East Coast of the United States, you can travel for 4 hours and go through 4 different states. On the West Coast, you travel for 4 hours, you're still in the middle of the state, right? So he moved to a couple states away and ended up buying, a very moderate, 3-bedroom, 2-bath house, very, very low. Payments are ridiculously low. They're like a third of what he was paying here for rent when he was renting, right? Let alone his mortgage. And so that what's left at the end of the day is different. And I think that, now that we're talking about that, that's probably why he let go of some properties. He didn't need to have those properties bring in more cash flows to sustain a different lifestyle that he has now. And kudos to him for doing that, because why waste my time chasing down rent checks and, water breaks?
Totally. But it's asking yourself the big question, like, what am I, like I live in Sydney right now, which is beautiful. I live in one of the most beautiful suburbs. I live in Bondi Beach in Sydney. It's one of the most desirable suburbs in the world. It's amazing.
Yeah.
But it's very expensive. It's very expensive. Yeah. Now we rent because we rent vest, but it's like we recently went for a trip up the coast, 8 hours up the coast just for a little trip. And, but we're like, okay, if we lived here, our cost of living would probably be about half, and it's probably more beautiful. And how would that change what we need out of life? And I think once you start asking yourself those questions, I think it opens up a lot more possibility.
Yeah. I love that. I love it. I love that we finally got there too, because that really is the premise of this entire podcast is, shifting. It's everything from success to significance, but it's also the shift from success to significance, and that doesn't have to be the impact you make on other lives. It can also be the impact you make on your own. And that, I think is really key and critical. And absolutely love that message. So I want to say thank you so much for sharing that I've learned so much. I have so many ahas. I can't wait I'm going to go study a little more about
Negative gearing.
I was going to say gear negativing. Negative gearing. I want to learn more about that, because that's a phrase that I've never heard of before. And, and I think I'm pretty versed in real estate and investing, but you always can learn something. And that's what I love about it. So, now, so you have the future, ahead of you, and you've been involved in real estate now for, 5-10 years, something like that. What's the future for you? What is your next ceiling that you're looking at for growth for you?
Yeah, that is a really great question, because I don't think about it like a ceiling. I'm thinking about it more like a fulfillment piece.
A next level. Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's a fulfillment piece. So what we're working towards is getting ourselves to a point where we can I get essentially have a high impact business, but have more freedom for ourselves. Yeah. So we're still in that phase of business where we are working quite a lot. It's great. We love it.
Well, yeah, we talked about, I think we did on your podcast, but I'll mention it here, is like the 4 stages of growth, right? There's formulation, concentration, momentum, and stability. And some people will say that there's a 5th stage, which is success. I don't like using it, because it means that I got there. Now what? So for me, it's always a perpetual thing. I want to live, it's not, they say it's not success isn't a destination, it's a journey. So I don't want to ever see that it's there, but yeah, when you look at what you're doing, you guys are in concentration and momentum and concentration and momentum. And the next thing for you is getting from momentum to stability, where you're saying, hey, it's stable, and now we can shift it and we can do some things different and maybe look at something new. And, that's a really cool way to look at that.
Exactly. And that's the kind of next piece on the horizon is really that. And you summed it up really well. It's the stability, and then going, okay, cool. What's next? And that would be the next thing for us. And it's exciting. It's exciting to be looking at that and thinking about that and going, okay, what
and
could
especially
that next phase
during
be
the cocoon of COVID.
Yeah, totally.
Right. To have that. And I think that's what a lot of people are listening to the podcast, thinking, okay, so what am I going to do? I've been sitting home all day. I don't know if I want this. I don't know if I want that. I think that is, pertinent to what we're all looking at for the future, and I call it the soaring 20s. Right? Not the roaring 20s, but the soaring 20s. This is the decade of really soaring and becoming knowledge brokers and, just gaining knowledge from everyone around us, not from books.
Yeah. Yeah, 100%. And it's a really interesting thing you touched on about I think this decade is shaping up to be absolutely amazing, quite frankly. But it's interesting as well, because I think you touched on an interesting point there about becoming knowledge brokers and all of that kind of stuff, which I think is amazing. I think it's a great way to show up in the world, impact more people, and all of that kind of stuff. But where I kind of want to sit is to be that, like, quite hands-on. Like, we've thought about, do we do courses and all of that kind of stuff? But where we want to be in the ecosystem is to say, no, we'll do this with you. We'll hold your hand and we'll take you there. And I think that in and of itself is a really nice point of difference.
Well, and heck, you're going to learn so much more doing that, because we know that when we teach, we learn, right? And so when we're in the grains of it and seeing the things that are happening with people, it's pretty cool to see.
Yeah.
To see that that happening as well. Well, I want to say thank you so much. So how can we help you? How can we help you in your practice, given that you've just helped us?
Well, look, it's pretty simple. I'm not here to sell anything or any of that kind of stuff. So it's all good. But if you're listening to this, it tells me you're probably interested in podcasts. And if you're interested in real estate, mindset, success, entrepreneurship, any of that kind of stuff, I have a podcast. You'll probably enjoy it. And again, we're not really selling anything on that either. No. So it's a good opportunity to just get to know us and learn some different stories and all of that kind of stuff. And you can do that by heading to theinvestorlab.com.au. There's like a whole bunch of free resources there. You can learn about Australian real estate. You can get a copy of my book there, or you can get my copy of my book on Amazon. It's not like a huge, big profit center for us or anything like that. So most
authors they're a gift to the world.
Yeah, exactly. So I think the way to help me would just be to help yourself and to enjoy what we put out in the world and to go tap into that.
Yeah, I love it. And we'll have the link in the show notes as well for that, as well as to your book on Amazon, for those that are listening in the US, so that you won't have to spend the money. I'll tell you what, I was going to send a book to a colleague of mine in Canada, and it was $40.
Wow.
I could drive it almost for $40.
That's so funny.
Tank of gas, right?
That's so funny.
Well, it's been great, Goose. Thank you so much for sharing time with us. I really, really appreciate it. I am so excited for our relationship to continue over the years. This is just the beginning of it. And I know that we've already been helping each other and sharing, podcast guests and things like that together. So it'll continue to grow. And I just wish you all the best prosperity, as in the years to come with what you're doing. And thank you for giving what you do to the rest of the world. Appreciate it.
Thank you so much. It's been a real pleasure. Thanks for having
me. Thanks. All right. We'll catch you next time on Success to Significance. And don't forget, go write a review. Give us a great rating. We want to know what you want to hear as well. And we'll continue to deliver exactly what you need. We'll talk to you next time.
You've been listening to Success to Significance with Jen du Plessis, the #1 podcast for people wanting to give more value and make an impact. Loved this episode? Be sure to subscribe right now at www.jenduplessis.com/S2S for more stories, strategies, and thoughts to help you gain significance and success. And if you like what we're doing, don't forget to give us a rating and review so we can continue to bring you the best content possible. Join us next week for another breakthrough episode. Thank you for listening.